Hello and welcome back. I promised I was going to talk a little bit more about how we see some of these things show up in adulthood. And for me, one of the biggest things I have noticed is a lot of what shows up in self-help books, either for relationship, business, or just a general bolstering of self-esteem, is parallel, running very on par to the ideology underneath this parenting style. And whether, again, if you want to call it gentle parenting, conscious parenting, respectful parenting, being a momagator, having that thick skin, but having that soft underbelly, whatever you're most comfortable with calling it, being a cycle breaker, the ideology is to take childhood skills and lessons and carry them on to adulthood. And as I said, I'm noticing in a lot of these self-help books that what they're teaching and trying to get you to kind of retrain yourself is some of the same things. One of the biggest things that jumped out at me immediately in Matthew Frey's "This Is How Your Marriage Ends," and it was in chapter 2, so very early on in the book, is talking about invalidation as well as talking about what we need to be teaching our kids. His quote actually early on was, one of the ways we can make this world a better place is by getting collectively serious about educating both ourselves and young people and generations about the knowledge and skills we will need to excel in our human relationships. That carries over whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, a working relationship, co-workers, siblings. In general, there are certain things that are going to make it easier to interact with your fellow human. Being able to validate somebody else's opinion, be able to have empathy, be able to have connection and communication is going to be important through all different facets of not your childhood and very much of your adulthood. And I know many of us probably wish we had some of these skills. Those of us that deal with the anxiety or are concerned about how we say things, what we say things, or often feel misunderstood, some of it is because we're missing these skills. And not necessarily not trying to blame or fault anybody, but those skills simply weren't there and we're trying to retrain ourselves. Can we give our kids these skills now? So that as they get into adulthood, they're not having to retrain their brain. It's already there. They're already practicing it. He also says, as parents, maybe we can prepare our children in ways we were not to navigate the emotional minefield of adult relationships, such as marriages, as his book is titled, "This Is How Your Marriage Ends." One of the biggest things he talks about, again, early on, chapter 2, talking about invalidation. And something you're going to see if you decide to read this book, and something you're probably going to notice if you start watching and educating yourself on this parenting style, is validation and connection and empathy are all very huge parts. One of his examples that he uses in reference to his son. So if your child comes to you and says, "Hey, I think there's a monster under my bed," what do you do? Or how were you responded to as a child? "Oh, you need to grow up. There's no monsters under your bed. Go back to bed." "Hey, there's a monster in bed. What do I do?" "Well, there's no such things as monsters. Now let's go back to bed." Or, "Oh, that does sound really scary. Let's go. I'll walk back with you. Let's check. I can see where that would be scary to you. Let's check. I don't see any monsters. Did you hear something? Do you feel better?" Hug, kiss, take a moment to lay with them, whatever, to comfort them. Most of us probably are going to go with options 1 or 2. Most of us were probably told there's no such thing, or grow up in some form or fashion. Now, don't get me wrong, we're all parents or caregivers, and if you've done any of that for very long, we've all had those nights where we barely even understand that our child is talking to us, and we've probably sent them back to bed. Again, there's one-off instances, don't beat yourself up. But overall, the ideology is to see them and hear them and validate where they're feeling. And Matthew Frey talks about in his marriage that he realized after the fact that he was invalidating his wife. And he calls it the invalidation triple threat. So 3 things would usually happen to invalidate. "Hey, honey, something is bothering me. this monster is under my bed. And he would go into, no. I understand you think this is what happened. Indirectly telling her that her thoughts are wrong, or that your child's thoughts are wrong. It didn't happen and you shouldn't feel this way. You're thinking about it wrong. Hey, honey, something's wrong. There still seems to be a monster under my bed. Well, yeah, maybe that happened, but you're just making a big deal about it. Really, you shouldn't act that way. Really, you should be fine. You should be able to be totally okay with that. Don't worry. Yeah, invalidation. The third one he talks about is feeling kind of attacked and then trying to justify and be in defense of, no, let me explain. This is why you shouldn't feel this way. Either way, all three of these kind of invalidate the feelings that the person you're speaking to is happening. And the same thing happens to your child. You send them back to bed without connection or comfort, without hearing what they're trying to say to you, or tell them that they shouldn't feel this way because they're too little or they need to grow up. They're still going back to bed, scared and alone. They didn't get connection with you. They stop coming to you because you send them away. There's no comfort. This erodes the trust and the safety and the connection that you are building or have built. And this is what he talks about in his book with his wife, his ex-wife, is he eroded that safety, he eroded that trust. Because every time she came to him, and this is partly his words, every time, 90% of the time, he would invalidate what she was saying to him. There was not, honey, I hear you. That sounds horrible. Whether he agreed or not. Same thing with your child with the monster. You are pretty positive there's not a monster under their bed. But what does it mean to go with them and help them check, come up with potentially a solution so that they're not afraid, or just take that moment to connect so they feel safe before they go back to sleep? That is a lesson that's going to carry on. And do you want the lesson to carry on that your child can trust you and can come to you for safety and connection when they're afraid, whether you think that it's totally important, whether you agree with them or not? Matthew Frey talks about it with his ex-wife. He talks about it in how to bolster your relationship in your marriage. But the same is true for your children. And the same is going to be true for relationships that you are going to have from childhood, through teenage years, through adulthood. Being able to hear whoever you're speaking to and taking a moment to validate what they're saying, truly hear what they're saying, have empathy for what they're saying, and provide a connection, provides a sense of safety and trust. And that's going to go a long way in relationships, particular ones that are very close to you, such as your children, such as your wife, your spouse, your husband, your significant other. But it's also going to be important in a working situation. If you're the boss, you're the coworker that people can come to and you can hear them and empathize with them, and then potentially come up with a solution that helps validate everybody, you're going to go a little bit farther. People are going to continue to come to you. If you are the person in your relationship, in your job, that says, no, that's not how that's going to work. Your feelings don't matter. And whether you say it in those words or not, it erodes that trust, it erodes the connection, and it erodes the safety. And people leave feeling unsettled and not feeling that they can come to you. So as parents, in particular, do you want to send your child back to bed still fearing the monsters and fearing your reaction? Or do you want to help your child back to bed to be able to connect with them and build safety so that when those problems are bigger than the monster under the bed, they know that they can come to you, and that someday that they can go to their significant other or friend and feel safe knowing that this person hears them, or going into adulthood feeling like they have to battle it on their own. That's the thought I'll leave you with today. And again, just kind of slowly building up the examples I see from things that we learn and do through adulthood, and try to kind of retrain ourselves of things that we can teach our children now. Because childhood skills are adulthood skills.